Welcome everybody to the Flatcar Developer Sync in June. And we actually have a pretty packed agenda here, and we have a pretty packed attendance, and that's nice to see new folks here. I will share the agenda really quick so we have it, and then we can start the meeting. We are a CNCF incubating project, and as such, we adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct, which basically means be nice to each other, be respectful and mindful towards each other, and also, because we have a pretty sizable group today, if someone just keeps talking and you want to say something and they don't stop, like me right now, please use the raise hand feature, and we will make sure that you get your airtime. All right, so hopefully I shared the right window. That is the DevSync agenda, and our first one is let's check for new participants and give them some time. New partitions. I don't know how I got that idea. Let's check for new participants and have them do a quick intro if they like. And for that, I will unshare so people can see the new participants. I see Martin and Vivek are new in this loop. Do you want to speak up and give a brief intro?
I mean, I can certainly do. So I'm Martin Mailand. I am from Berlin, from Germany. So I actually know a couple of the kinfolk people from the meetups. So I think we met also at Thilo in person. Most likely you can't remember me, but I attended your meetups a couple of times. I mean, years, it was even before Corona. So we started then to use Flatcar Linux in our environment. So I work for a big ISP company kind of style. So we use Flatcar as a basis for routing daemons in particular. So the routing daemons from big resellers, they come as a container, as a Linux container, a Docker container, and we're using Flatcar just as the mean to operate them. So that's basically my use case. So they are not in the data path, in the forwarding path, they are just in the signaling path. So, and we need the big CPUs of the AMD CPUs to really get network convergency times down to a minimum. So that's my use case. And therefore I'm using Flatcar for a couple of years. So that's me. Thanks.
Amazing. Thanks for the info, Martin. Vivek is just curious on Flatcar, how Flatcar fits in the Kubernetes ecosystem. He just dropped a message in the chat and how it compares to CoreOS. You have to specify, Vivek, which CoreOS you mean. Jeremy? You're muted.
Yes, I am, of course. Martin, I was just curious, which platforms do you run Flatcar on? Is it bare metal servers that you host yourself?
Yes, that's bare metal server because it's not a multi-tenant environment, so it's just a means of having a nice platform for to use Docker. So basically, we get from a big network vendor routing daemon, so pure software. It's packed in the Docker format. So and we just deploy it. So it's basically route reflectors what we're using. So it's a big pan-European network, and we're using route reflectors in software because the convergence time is much faster. Because in an x86 server you can really put in big CPUs, and normally routers, real routers, they have a very small CPU, very limited CPU powers, and therefore convergence time is quite high. So that's our reason. So it's not in the data path, it's just signaling just to get the route information converged very quickly.
Awesome. Thank you very much. This kind of info helps us make informed decisions often, because sometimes we don't know who's using what platform, how much usage do we get on bare metal. So it's good to hear that people are using it. Thanks. Back to Thilo.
I agree. So I had a little chat conversation with Vivek, the other new person on the call. And they were asking how Flatcar compares to CoreOS Container Linux, and Vivek refers to the actual original Container Linux, not Fedora CoreOS. We started as a friendly fork of CoreOS Container Linux, and we're basically continuing the CoreOS work. So CoreOS used a lot of Chromium OS, which was based on Gentoo, and Flatcar actually returned a lot to the Gentoo roots, so we moved a lot closer to Gentoo. But we still have all of the CoreOS look and feel and guarantees and mechanisms back in place, automated in-place updates, rollback support, all of the nice things, unattended updates, very thorough tests, all of the nice things that people expect from their container operating system. We joined the CNCF last year as an incubating project, and so in the Kubernetes ecosystem, we basically aim to provide a safe, secure, self-updating, and reliable operating system below Kubernetes. That's what we do. All right, enough self-praise. Gonna go back to the agenda if no one else wants to share anything. I actually am sharing the screen. Good. Okay. Yeah. My announcements were updated. So this part used to warn everybody about cgroups v1 not being supported anymore sometime in 2025. That day is literally today, because today we published the first major stable release that does not support cgroups v1 at all anymore. People should migrate their workloads to cgroups v2. Reason for that is because we ship systemd 256, which doesn't support cgroups at all anymore. It's not tested. Patches and fixes will not be merged, so we needed to move on. And it's in stable now. And if you're using the cgroups v1 backwards compatibility mode in Flatcar, your nodes will simply refuse to update. They won't take the update. There's kind of a safety check, safety mechanism in the update, because we don't want your nodes to come up with cgroups v2 without you having the chance to have a look at it, obviously. If you need more, like even more time, cgroups v2 have been supported for 2 years now in Flatcar. But if you need even more time to migrate, your last chance is the current LTS version, LTS 2024, which is major release 4081. So if you change your nodes channels to this LTS channel, then you will continue to enjoy cgroups v1 support until the end of 2025 or early 2026. We're not sure yet when the next LTS version is being published, and then you'll need to migrate for that. So if you absolutely and desperately need 6 more months to migrate, then that's your path forward here. I see in the chat that Jeremy gives a huge thank to Adrian to basically go the extra mile and make sure people can upgrade safely. So that was good work. Krajimir.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask because how late 2025 is the support going to be? Like, when do we plan to actually drop the support for the LTS 2024? I don't remember if you have a date or something.
Yeah, no. What we usually do is late 2025 or early 2026, we'll have a new LTS, and from the point in time where that LTS is available, we support the old LTS for another 6 months so people can safely migrate. So I mean, if you look at the whole timeline, then that'll be mid 2026, in which this LTS won't receive any updates anymore, and then everything will be gone.
Gotcha.
Good question, though. All right. Monthly contributions. Yeah, we had 3 first-time contributors in the last month. The first one, Antti, had a website fix. There was a typo. We really like those drive-by comments, so that's good work. Awesome. Then we had Subnix, and Subnix actually had a PR for 2 repositories. He added Portman support for Toolbox. Toolbox container that people can run to interactively debug on Flatcar nodes. and it currently runs on, I think, either Docker or systemd nspawn, I'm not sure. And Subnix added Podman support, and that's amazing. And then we had Robin, and Robin again provided a drive-by commit for the Sysex Bakery skeleton script. There were a few typos, and those fixes are always welcome. Good work, folks, and welcome to the project. Okay. So let's switch to the advisories and security updates. Let me open the report and give the mic to Dongsu for an update.
There have been several security issues in the last weeks, and Krishmir is already working on weekly updates, and that alone should resolve a 10 set of security issues. Big kudos for that. However, there is another one. Recently, there is a new security issue in PAM, and as we discussed it with Chui, and we should do a manual update. However, we have some time until the July release, so probably at least 4 weeks. And yeah, we don't need to rush, just create a manual version bump until then. That's it.
Awesome, thank you. All right. There aren't really many updates for the roadmap and the projects. I'll skip looking at the roadmap actually, because that's usually my section. I know that there's no major updates to our roadmap items. Composable OS, Sysex and Cluster API works ongoing, but not much news to report. We'll continue to iterate on our Cluster API working group on Bootstrap provider separation. Work is slow, but there's progress. If you want to join in, check out the Cluster API project. We have a working group README in the repository there in the community section, and you can join the working group if you like. All right. Secure boot, trusted boot. Sayan.
Yeah, so not much update on this front either. I saw that you commented on the ticket that we have, so I think we are waiting. I have pinged a few folks internally, but yeah, not much update on that ticket either.
Yeah, we have all the items in place. We're waiting on the CNCF actually engaging with us and giving us like their official kind of rubber stamp that we can code sign with their official name, and that takes some time. CNCF incubation process is no news. It's just, yeah. I actually had a potential contributor reaching out and proposing they assemble like kind of a list on to-do items for graduation. So we might even have updates on that in the next month. But for now, nothing tangible. Flatcar infrastructure, Mathieu.
Hello. Yes, really quickly. I hope you can hear me correctly, by the way. For the migration, we're still waiting for the CNCF to provide the infrastructure for hosting the new Flatcar infra. So waiting from them. And for the CI, we set back our GitHub Action Runner Manager. So it's called GARM. Basically, it helps you to provide CI runners on GitHub organization. So we added back to the scripts repository, which facilitate a lot the external contributions because they don't rely on Jenkins to get the things to be built. They can use the CI actions from GitHub. and we gave back to the GARM community by implementing the support of GARM for Akamai Linode provider. So yeah, that's pretty convenient if you want to run GitHub Actions runner on Akamai. It's open source and it's on the Flatcar organization. So yeah, that's it for the infra.
Awesome. But particularly like the GARM work, it's great. GARM has been proven to be a very flexible framework for running GitHub self-hosted actions, self-hosted runners, and yeah, having more support for more vendors is always nice. Nebraska status, Irvin, I heard something's going on. Should you be speaking, Irvin? I can't hear you, unfortunately. Irvin needs 1 second, he said in the chat.
Hello, hello.
Hey, there you are.
Hi everyone. So yeah, I've been working on a OpenID Connect integration refactoring, which is going to come with some breaking changes in terms of setting up the authentication provider. These changes that are going to be necessary are most likely just adding a few flags to the configuration and changing an option on the provider side. So this refactor basically simplifies quite a lot the authentication authorization process. Currently, we have an implementation which is a hybrid approach. It's an approach that keeps or manages a state on the backend as well. But after the refactoring, the client, the front end, can talk to the provider directly, obtain an access token, and use that to access the resources from the backend. It reduces some potential security risks, and it also comes with some maintenance improvements. Yeah, I guess that's all. I have a draft PR for it, and we'll provide documentation how to migrate. I guess that's all what I wanted to mention.
Awesome. Matthew.
Yeah, worth to mention that we released a new version of Nebraska last week, the 2.11. So yeah, if you want to update your Nebraska service, it's the time.
Awesome. So Irvin, this migration process or the break of backwards compatibility, like effort-wise, people upgrading Nebraska, how much work would it put on their shoulders?
I would say ideally half an hour.
Gotcha. Okay, that feels bearable. Thank you. Awesome. That's good news. All right. Before we go to open mic time and discuss the issue that everybody is very excited about discussing, brief view on the tactical and your chance to call out any upcoming in progress or maybe pending items that you want us to focus on. Is there anything that is like pressuring you, anything that you want to raise here so you get attention for any item?
Yeah, some time ago, I was working on the update of the NVIDIA drivers because there was also some security issue to fix. I think it was frozen for some time because Daniel was working on this NVIDIA SysX, so there was some workaround the same place. So now it's done. So now I can see that we have like two ways to get the NVIDIA drivers, which is either you use the SysX, which is the new thing, so you can pick which version of the driver you want. There are some branches, or you can use this old thing that I think Cyan wrote a long time ago. This is now named as an NVIDIA driver service. So basically, I think it is some unit that you can kick off. It probably downloads and builds whatever driver and whatever. So I'm just wondering. This is the old thing that you are just showing. I have like a separate branch for it. So I probably just do a forced push to that one eventually. But yeah, I was like wondering, like, do we plan on, I don't know, removing the old NVIDIA driver service package in favor of the SysX, or do they have some unique use cases that grants, well, keeping them? Because just to add something, basically when I'm trying to do an update to the NVIDIA drivers, I want to keep them in sync. So both SysX and the NVIDIA driver service will install the same driver version. So there is no so to avoid a situation that sometimes you need to use a SysX to have something working on the service. I just want to have the versions to be the same, so there is some synchronization to do. Well, you need to remember about it. Yeah. So yeah, I was wondering why we have both.
No, that makes sense. We suspect quite a few folks out there have wired their provisioning logic on basically using the old approach that built the drivers on Flatcar nodes. And I think we might want to give them some migration time when the new stuff is coming in, which should, like, simplify their provisioning a lot. So the new stuff is only currently entering beta, also literally today. So in your beta deployments, you can use NVIDIA SysX, which should speed up initial deployment time a lot. Please go and test. And then wait for it to go to stable and maybe have one or two stable releases and then deprecate it. But be kind of vocal about it right now, right? Like I have this nice deprecation warning, which I bring up in every single meeting on C Groups V1. Maybe we do something with the old way of building NVIDIA drivers as well. Jeremy.
I actually want to contradict something you just said. I have reasons why I believe that we need to keep both methods around indefinitely, and that's if users are on a stable Flatcar release that is a bit older and they want to run newer drivers, this is the only way by updating the the variable, and so they can override the driver version locally. That's something we support, and so that way they can be on, say, an LTS image or a stable image and build whatever driver they need. And the other use case is actually the inverse of that. So you're updating Flatcar, but you are bound to a certain driver version because your workload is sensitive to changes in the driver, right? So every time I talk to people about NVIDIA drivers, they said that yes, they need control over the driver version.
Okay.
So some use cases will be served by the SysX, right? But there's this specialized ones where this customizability is useful. So I suggest just keeping them in sync, keeping the defaults in sync, knowing that users can override the driver version for themselves.
Gotcha. Thanks for the info. Yeah, I want to keep them in sync, so by default you have the same versions everywhere. But okay, yeah. it's not a lot of hindrance. You know, the update of the service package is actually quite easy. It's just a rename. Yeah. I also noted that the NVIDIA drivers package that is used for the SysX is not really in the automation. So you are not getting the kernel. We are not getting the NVIDIA drivers updates. So this is also a thing that I'm going to fix. Yeah, okay, so that's it from my side. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, it's actually a good point. I didn't think about that. And like the second kind of scenario that you described, the first scenario is pretty much included even in the SysX, right? Because previous releases, old releases, won't be updated to the new SysX method, so they'd be safe. But newer releases requiring older versions could, from us, only be supported by providing an ever-growing list of NVIDIA drivers, and that is something I'd like to prevent. So yeah, it's a good point. Thanks for the feedback. All right. So that's pretty much it. Thank you for the feedback in the standard sections. And now for the exciting part. So there was a bit of discussion. The issue we're facing currently in Flatcar, and we actually mentioned that earlier in this call, is that the two init RDs for like both versions of Flatcar, the current one and the potentially new updated one, or the current one and the previous one, are in the boot partition. The boot partition has very limited space, and we pulled off quite a few tricks in the past to actually lower our usage of the boot partition. But we've kind of hit a wall there. And there are multiple approaches around how to tackle that. The simplest approach is obviously to just increase the size of the boot partition in new images. Now that would leave all of the existing deployments at a risk of not being able to update anymore, because the new kernel wouldn't even fit in their current boot partition. That could be a problem, and that would basically force people to recycle nodes, and that would be a major drawback for this approach, although it has a very tempting simplicity, right? There are no risks involved except breaking backwards compatibility. The alternative plan and the boot partition size increase PR was actually a reaction of the to the more elaborate plan, is to actually not put the kernel in the boot partition, only bootloader scripts, and ship the kernel combined with the operating system image in USR. There are also drawbacks to that, and I have basically both maintainers working on the respective directions here. The one is Adrian, who proposed the simple and reliable approach. The other is Chewy, who proposed the kernel move plan. And I think the boot partition increase is pretty easy to understand. I'd like to give Chewy like 2 or 3 minutes to kind of give an overview of the kernel move plan, if that's okay with you, Adrian. Awesome. Okay, Chewy has the mic.
Okay, not sure where to start. It's quite a big plan, but so one of the key points here is that up till now we've never upgraded Grub on existing deployments, so you get left with the one that you originally installed, and that means that you have the Grub config that you originally had, and that kind of ties our hands a bit, particularly in terms of where we load the kernel from. What's also made it more complicated is the fact that the Grub config is baked into the Grub image for security reasons. So we can't just simply replace the config, we actually have to replace Grub, which we may want to do anyway for, you know, new features or better security or whatever. Also, this gives us a chance to maybe increase the flexibility around maybe what kernel command line parameters we pass for each release, because currently they're baked in. So yeah, I kind of felt the two problems went together. And another part of the problem is that we have this Verity root hash, the thing that ensures that the USR partition doesn't get modified. And currently we store that within the kernel image in a slightly strange location, sort of buried within the image that we've had to patch grub to read. And we wouldn't be able to do that anymore once we've moved the kernel, because the kernel would be inside USR, so you can't take a hash of USR and write it to the kernel if that's where you're writing it to. So that hash then has to be stored somewhere else. The only place that it really can be stored is in the boot partition. That then raises security questions. How do you protect that Verity hash from being tampered with? So I've looked at things like signing the Verity hash, and that's a feature that Linux has. It can verify that cryptographically. But at the same time, I thought we probably need to protect the actual command line parameters if they're no longer baked into the grub config. We cannot bake them into the grub config because, again, it needs to work across different releases. So yeah, I've also been leveraging grub's own support for GPG key signature verification, which has led to the slightly unusual situation where we're now signing the Verity hash twice, and that's raised some question marks. Still open to explore alternatives there. I just did what I felt was the best thing to secure it all the way through. But, there's also, one more thing. There's also difficulties with the upgrade, of course, because our current upgrade payload assumes that there's simply a disk image and a kernel image, and it just sticks that kernel image in boot. That would no longer apply. So there's maybe ways around that, but potentially slightly ugly. So yeah, there's that side of it as well.
Can you walk us through the boot process of like the new kind of concept that we're pursuing? Like what does it look like, the booting?
So so the shim starts and the grub starts as before. We get the menu entries. What's slightly different is that the menu entries then what it actually does when you select that menu entry now is stored in a separate script, which I've called load-A or load-B for the different slots. And before it tries to use that, it does a GPG verification of that script. For slightly tedious reasons to do with how grub does things, I then have to load that script, and it contains a function, and then in the main config again you can call that function. So it's basically run the kernel, or run, do the boot basically. And in that function it also does a GPG verification of the Verity hash signature, which is in a separate file, and then it boots the kernel with all the command line parameters like before. And then it goes into, boots into the init RD. At this point, I've dropped our custom Verity hash handling with the standard system D one, just so that I didn't have to re-implement all the Verity hash signature checking stuff. It mounts the boot partition to get to the Verity root hash and does the verification, and that all goes ahead as before. Mounting boot in early in the early boot stage isn't a new thing. We used to do that anyway as part of Ignition. It just now does it slightly earlier. Yeah, and then it boots up as normal. So that's basically it.
Awesome. I think Adrian wanted to. Do you want to discuss your concerns with this approach and give us a? You already mentioned things like which I really love. Like this is awesome input. Like people have kind of validated this boot process and have it being in compliance and whatnot, and so that needed to be redone and all of this. I'd love to hear like more of your concerns.
Hello, can you hear me well? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, again. I actually raised the thumb, but you know what? I'll stop sharing if that's okay.
It's okay. It's okay to have the screen shared.
Okay, cool.
So yeah. So the point here, just to keep let's say the direction of the discussion, is the upgrade process, right? So we're not trying to fix other stuff here. We're trying to fix the upgrade process that won't work very soon, right? So this is the actual problem. And the problem with upgrades in this case is that, I mean, the biggest problem I see is that you'll have to still be able to fall back, right? So if the new Flatcar doesn't boot, right, you still want to be able to boot partition A, right? So that scenario has to also be taken into consideration, right? And that will also have some, weird implementation in terms of because you'll end up with two implementations, right, in the same boot partition. Am I correct?
So I've tried to take this into account as much as I can without going overboard. There seems to be some debate over how far we need to go with that, but I felt the easiest way to do it was sorry, there's a few different angles to it, but in terms of the new grub being able to boot the older release, so if you need to just roll back your release, what I was going to do was, as well as installing this load-a script, I've included a load-old script in the upgrade payload and its signature. And then the new grub could read that just the same way as it reads the one for the new release and boot the old release with the old parameters. And that way it's still fairly consistent. We're not putting any special logic in the new grub config, and it's still quite clean. If there's issues with grub, say for instance, the new grub itself doesn't even start. Luckily, the UEFI shim that we use has a fallback mechanism, and if you install the binary as FBX64 EFI or something, it will automatically run that instead of what it was trying to run, and it does that transparently. If the new grub does start, but for some reason it can't quite load the new release, I will also add a menu entry to then chain load back to the old grub, and the old kernel should still be there, so you can still go through that route. So it provides a few different avenues. Jeremy suggested that the old bootloader the old grub should be able to boot the new releases. That's a bit harder to pull off. I'm not entirely sure if it's feasible, but I'll give it some consideration.
So what I actually proposed was that we can't force users to upgrade their bootloader on no notice, right? That's I suggest, not just suggest, I insist that we must consider the user angle to this and kind of, we know that it's not possible to atomically update the bootloader, right? So we shouldn't get into the habit of expecting to be able to update the bootloader all the time, right? And so also, I wouldn't say that it's feasible for us to automatically update the bootloader. As a data sample, CoreOS, Fedora CoreOS, finally, when they implemented the bootloader updates, they put it in the hands of users. They said there is a manual command that you can run if you update the bootloader. So I think what I proposed, among other tweaks to the design, is that we have like a transition period where basically we accept that users may not have updated the bootloader. So that's why I said, old bootloader should still, or the new kernel should still work with the old scheme. The old kernel should work with the new scheme. No, wait. Something in that direction, right? Like the old grub should be able to boot the new kernel using the old scheme. The new grub should be able to boot the old kernel using the old scheme for fallback only, right? Kind of once. And then, I think this is a great instance to try what Krzesimir talked about in the past, which was that Nebraska should be able to cut off updates based on certain conditions for certain versions. Yeah, exactly. So that we can actually pull this off. So it's not so much that I think the plan is terrible or that it's bad. I actually like a lot of the design considerations here. I think we just need to have a very gradual transition that kind of respects users' expectations of reliability.
Thank you. I didn't know about Fedora CoreOS, so that's an interesting.
I'll link the issue somewhere.
Yeah. I did try to manage the risk, trying to do things atomically where possible. I did find quite late on the FAT partition, the FAT file system. There is no safe way to rename. It's just a design flaw. And this is faced by all distros. What I didn't realize until today was I was under the impression that more distros did just update grub with the package manager. I think only OpenSUSE does that. And yes, of course, there is a risk there. So that's why I was looking at these fallback options. But yeah, the safer we can make it, the better, definitely.
I also have I just got this idea right now. So let's say that the partition expansion, my idea works in the sense that it is going to be taken into consideration. So my idea is that given enough time, everyone will converge to, the new partition because they will upgrade in the sense that not a lot of people right now, mostly the ones using Kubernetes, they are just, considering VMs as cattle, not pets. So basically they'll do upgrades. Upgrades in the sense that they'll tear down the VM and create and spawn another one, if you know what I mean. But I have an idea, the OM-based upgrades. So when you do the upgrade, you already know what OM it is, right? And given that, you can actually create a kernel and an initRD with limited amounts of drivers, right? In some situations. In most cloud environments, you can. The problem is only bare metal, right? On the bare metal, you have to have them all. Well, minus the virtualized ones, but those are pretty small. So you see where I'm going with the idea?
I don't quite follow. Can you make it more obvious?
So when update engine runs, right?
Yes.
It can know what OM is that Flatcar running on,
Yes.
OpenStack or Azure,
Yeah.
Amazon, right? And if you don't have enough space to put the big one, the big Flatcar, we can actually build. This is a pain on us, but we can build kernels and thus initrds which are smaller.
It's not
Just an
without
idea.
precedent because Debian and other distributions do that, but it does put a bit of a burden on us.
But anyway, it's a difficult process either way.
It's difficult on update engines and because it requires n payloads or so something like that, right? I mean,
yes, it's difficult on us to maintain those old payloads, right? To build the kernels 10 times, right?
It's difficult if you consider it in a single step, and that's something else that I want to add in favor of the boot process overhaul that Shui proposes. So assuming that you have this in place and you have the flexibility to actually boot the kernel from someplace else than the boot partition, you could implement your idea, Adrian, a lot easier, and you would have a lot more flexibility in where to actually boot the kernel from in future releases using the same then established mechanic. That also makes me kind of like this approach, and it's not something I want to squeeze into as a feature into the process right now, but it would make a precedence for being able to do that in a safe way. I would even argue that like way in the future, should this be the new established boot process, you could ship multiple feature kernels within an operating system image or even within kind of a system extension image, and then select which one you boot via some mechanic at provisioning time. I'm thinking about, so we had this request for it wasn't Raspi optimized kernel, I think it was a Rockship embedded.
Or some people wanted real-time kernels as well.
Very, very good example. Real-time is actually an even more intrusive thing than the Rockship support, which extends the kernel by quite a bit of code, and you wouldn't want to have it on servers because of potential unrelated security issues in that code. So these things would all be available, and even it can be conceived that even migrating to a larger boot partition and still supporting current instances would be easier down the road if we had this in place. So I see it as kind of complementary. Tree.
One thing I forgot to mention in terms of the risk of replacing the bootloader, I had the idea the other day that because if we went ahead with my plan, we'd be effectively replacing the grub on every upgrade, because we ship a new grub, we install it, but from one release to the next, it's unlikely that grub's going to change very much, except when there's actually been a version bump. So if we could make the grub build reproducible, like fully reproducible, which I think is feasible at least for grub, then we could check beforehand, well, has it actually changed? No, okay, leave it alone. I wouldn't want to do that based on the version alone, but if it's bit the same, then leave it alone.
I wouldn't want to start updating grubs on every update.
No, exactly.
No, not even.
No, you mean more than that? Yeah. Well,
yeah.
yes.
No,
yes.
I mean, I would.
I suppose. I guess another way to look at it is if you were going to have this manual mechanism that you mentioned, then we could use that to be able to prompt the user. Oh, hey, grub's changed. Do you want to apply the change?
I mean, I imagine a user could opt into grub updates, perhaps, right? opt into a single grub update or perform them manually, right? Like, I mean, there are some users who have maintenance windows. They are interested in grub updates, I could imagine, right? And they're willing to deal with the fallout if it happens. But, you know, say a grub update fails, right? As a user, I'd be pissed. Right?
Are you not convinced by the shim fallback mechanism?
I left some comments about my understanding of the fallback mechanism. I don't see how it actually is useful because it's meant to install an FE boot entry, right? And
no, so I simplified that. So the standard fallback mechanism that it has is an actual EFI called that you install, and it has some logic that it reads some CSV or something, and then it creates a boot entry from it. But I thought, well, hang on, why don't you just put the grub binary as the fallback? And I tried it out, and it works. And then it doesn't have to do anything with boot entries; it just does it. The only slight downside with that is you don't actually know when it's fallen back. But I do have some ideas of how we could manage that.
yeah. So I think the real difficulty is going to be figuring out an upgrade path. And let's not forget about the BIOS systems, right? That we kind of already said this is an even trickier issue.
Yeah. I did skip over that part. So with BIOS, we can't safely update it at all. It's not really feasible. But I've found a way to work around the static config issue, which is the fact that it loads config from the OEM partition. So we can sort of hijack that. It's not majorly pretty, but it's not super ugly either. I have prototyped it. It gets us out of that bind anyway.
It does get us into a bit of a mess because we shouldn't really be touching the user's OEM config. I know we did it for the C groups migration, and I sort of regret that. But it's kind of conflating what is ours to configure and what is the user's. You know what I mean? So I know that, for example, you know, we ship grub config and OEM grub configs with content, right? That is expected, like the OEM ID. Yeah, I do feel a bit uneasy relying on that hopping around.
I think if we had a manual mechanism that users would trigger, then I think updating the BIOS grub would be okay.
Potentially be feasible as well.
Yeah. I guess the question then is, well, what if they keep saying no? You know, because we are pretty much up to the limit now of, you know, space-wise. So what do we say? Well, sorry, you can't upgrade unless you do this.
Yeah, here comes the thing that I said, that we have to ask people, provide them with the option, see how it works for them. I suppose you have a better reach on larger fleets, right? With BIOS and FE at the same time. I see a problem with the move and doing a lot of FE things with bare metal servers. We have to test it as far as we can go, because usually FE doesn't really work correctly on all of the hardware. So, and also we have to make sure that we do not rely on, let's say, niche FE things or things that might not work on hardware, real hardware. And we have to test it out before even, having it like in alpha or in the master branch, because once you put it out, it's gonna be, hard if one's fleet of hardware machines just fails, right? I mean, it's gonna be bad, right?
I'm not sure what you mean by niche. things?
FE is not a standard in the bare metal world. Never has been.
There are implementation issues, is what you're saying.
Yes. There's
I mean, I think it's a standard, but the
FE
quality
on
of
HP is not FE on Dell.
Okay, but we've been shipping new Grub builds all the time, with ever increasing releases, and we've never had a user come to us and say, well, not that I recall anyway, oh, that Grub just didn't work.
I'm saying that we are increasing the Grub, complexity, handling FE stuff.
Actually, we did have our Grub not working on certain bare metal. We had on, I think, the Ampere servers, the Ultras.
Those are really,
It didn't work until we patched it or upgraded or something. Or it was super slow. Weird stuff happens.
Wouldn't we rely on the shim anyways, which we would be shipping or would have been shipping in the existing installations that regarding that using the fallback grab, or maybe I understand.
Well, the shim fallback will trigger if it doesn't load at all. If it loads but it sort of hobbles along or whatever, then yeah, that's no use. But that's why I was going to add an menu entry for the old Grub. There's always some risk. You can't avoid it entirely.
We have servers at the office, and I can definitely test on multiple Ampere older and newer hardware. If Ampere and other things work manually, we can also ask users before to test it out if they have hardware. I think we can get a little bit of relax upgrade. Because on QEMU, it will be very easy. Also on Azure, also on Amazon. That's gonna be, piece of cake. If it works, if it doesn't, you fix it for almost everything, right? The problem is on the bare metals.
Great.
So I'll be willing to test that out.
I was secretly hoping that you'd be joining the effort from like the complementary side and make sure we scrutinize everything properly and basically give feedback and drive the initiative forward in that direction. What personally convinces me we're not entirely on the wrong track here is that all of the issues we've come up during the discussion that bug us now, like, supplying custom grub scripts for BIOSes in the OEM partition, which made Jeremy nervous, and all of these kind of workarounds would not be necessary if we were already there where we're planning to go. So it feels like the goal, like the finish line is something that seems desirable. And we need to flesh out the way to that, upholding the everlasting guarantee that we do not break user workloads and we're atomically updatable. It would be sad, not going for the simple boot partition size increase that Adrian proposed, which isn't backwards compatible, instead of choosing something that's way more complicated and still isn't backward compatible.
By the way, my change is backwards compatible. It's not upgrade in certain case compatible.
No, it makes sense. I'm not even, so I actually would go ahead and merge your PR almost right away if we could make sure that all of our tests still test for the old size, right? I think that's the important part. There isn't like much magic in the PR. It simply increases the boot partition size. Done. And I'm actually on your side in that the sooner we get this out there, the easier it is for us down the road. Also done. I don't know the like interiors of the the test that validates if an upgrade is still possible. I think it just does an upgrade. And that would succeed with the new partitioning scheme. And we would need to make sure that this test would assume that there's only like the old boot partition size that we were using.
So I can make an update engine change, right? And we just merge it.
I think it's one of the update tests. And that change should be part of not really part of the PR because it doesn't go into scripts, but part of the whole thing, and then we can merge both. And Joey?
Sorry, I do have to drop now. Obviously, we've overrun a fair bit, but but this has been very helpful. Thank you.
So yeah, we can continue. Related to my change, I think I actually thought it a little bit more, and it shouldn't do anything bad because, for example, we ship raw files that are 5 GB in size. That won't change, right? Because that was my initial problem. We ship how-tos that are 2 point something, I think 3 or 4 GB in size. So that is everyone that uses Flatcar won't be affected on the size increase, on an overall size increase, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. The only concern, the entirely only concern that I have is that our tests would kind of tell us that old existing instances can safely update while they don't, right? Because they have the old boot partition size. If you can make sure that this is being tested and we don't violate that promise, it's entirely fine. And as I said, I agree, this should go out sooner rather than later.
I can make a mantle test and an update engine check.
That would be
I think, and then we can reconvene and further think about the process. Anyway, it's not biting us. Oh, sorry, Krejumer said that it's already biting us today. So we have to take some action in both directions.
Yeah.
And yeah,
we've been bitten by it a number of times, and we always wiggled our way out. But it's a standing issue, and we need to like foundationally address it. And I think this has been, as Chewy said, this has been an amazing discussion.
The only way forwards without neither of those changes would be OM-based upgrades, where you have kernels and init RDs specifically for OMs, smaller ones. Or I was actually trying to see the drivers list and clean up some things that are never used, but you'll never know if they are never used, right?
Exactly. Exactly. That's the thing. You would then, if you follow that train of thought, you would then need to partition between drivers. You absolutely need to have in the init RD and drivers you could ship with USR, and that is a whole a zoo of complicated issues.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this the boot partition increase might give us a little bit of more certainty, maybe, because we can at some moment maybe be more comfortable with the boot process workflow, the kernel move plan. Let's see. I will do those two things, and we can consider think more about it. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. To just sum things up, I made some notes during the discussion, and I will edit at the comment on the agenda today. I have captured 3 to-dos. The first is add a migration plan to the kernel move proposal. So that's kind of a special segment that will explain how existing instances are safely migrated to the new scheme, and we can explore the edge cases together in that documentation. And the second is ensure thorough testing from the start. Don't take it into alpha because it might just accidentally slip into beta and stable, and we don't want that, particularly on bare metal. And the last to do is, in the meantime, get the boot partition resize PR merged and make sure we still test with the old smaller partition sizes. Awesome. Great discussion, folks. Love it. All right. We're running pretty late, and there won't be any release planning today because the releases are just out. It doesn't make any sense. So good release planning will happen in the next office hours course and the first one in July. But something that we want to call out is we have our very first Flatcar community maintenance mode this Friday. And that's basically just our old bug smashing day being renamed. It's now called Flatcar maintenance mode. So we'll be on a bridge, on a Jitsi bridge all Friday. You'll find the details in the discussion here. And you can join us on Friday. You can hack on stuff. You can write documentation, or you can bubble up your favorite issue, and we can take a look at it. Do I even? I've been doing this in the wrong window, right? I should have done it here. Okay, so here is the Flatcar maintenance mode. I was marking around and clicking stuff, and then I just noticed the screen share doesn't change. So that's it. That's the maintenance Friday. It's this Friday. It would be awesome if folks could join us. Adrian.
I also have something to share. Some stuff that I've been working on. It's currently actually usable and tested. I'm sharing right now a link. So I don't know if some of you already ran OpenStack on Kubernetes on Flatcar. So
you want me to?
Yeah, I think you can. Yeah, you can share my.
Here we go.
I think it should go down. Yeah, OpenStack on Kubernetes. Yeah. So using Flatcar API provider, I could install Kubernetes on Flatcar and then have OpenStack installed on the Kubernetes. But OpenStack, I mean, natively installed on the Kubernetes, not running in a VM or stuff like that. It's really interesting. And at the same time, it's also installing KubeVirt. So you basically have on one Kubernetes 2 ways of managing virtual machines. It's quite interesting, but you can do it.
Nice. So you're using nested virtualization for the
No, not at all. If you install it on bare metal, it's not using the nested virtualization. If you, of course, install it on a VM, I mean the Kubernetes on a VM, yes. But it's made to install it on bare metal.
Very nice. This is good stuff. Mathieu, we found our OpenStack test environment for future releases.
Yeah, this is exactly what I said to Adrian when he showed me this, that we should investigate on hosting our own OpenStack with infrastructure revamp using this approach. And we should definitely have a blog post or documentation around this.
Yeah, I already have this documentation. I have to document a little bit on the requirements because there are a little bit of requirements on the Kubernetes side. For example, on the storage. Because actually, if you install Ceph on Kubernetes, Ceph runs natively. And OpenStack can literally use Ceph natively on the nodes. So there is no, it's a direct access to the storage. It's quite powerful.
Nice. Great stuff. All right. Yeah, thanks for mentioning it. This is great stuff. Okay, folks. We're about to close. Anything else folks want to discuss or bubble up? Lazy consensus. Everybody's happy. All right. Thank you very much for attending. We went a little overtime this time. I think it was worth it because the discussion was amazing. Very good stuff. I'm very happy to be part of this great community where we find consensus. And yeah, enjoy your time. and see you on Metrics or in the office hours in July. Thanks, folks, and bye.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.